Yes, ladies and gentlemen, thank you once again for joining us for this latest episode of the INC Preview Show. My name is Karl Bainbridge, trying to hold the fort for this weekend, and I'm joined as ever by Max Grant. Max,
Hello.
long time no see.
Yeah, I know it's been a while, but glad to be back.
When was the last time, UFC 231, I think?
Yeah, you could be talking that far.
Yeah, that would have been
easy.
Holloway versus Ortega.
Yeah, that's right. Which was a good fight.
Hell of a fight.
Did like that.
Hell of a fight.
It kind of showed to me how Holloway has progressed so much. Like for me, dominated that fight. He controlled it, and how much I love Ortega.
And the thing was, it wasn't as if Brian fought badly in that
No.
fight. It was just that Max was on a completely other level.
He is, and I think if you compare Holloway's earlier fights to now as well, it's kind of the octagon domination, like in every aspect. And like I say, Ortega, it wasn't a slouch. He wasn't like sitting back. He was getting these punches in, but I think Holloway is just an all-round better fighter now.
Well, Max Holloway will be a key focus of today's preview show. Of course, he is main eventing against Dustin Poirier.
Yes.
Before we get there, though, we're going to have to talk about everything that's been happening in the world of mixed martial arts, because, trust me, this past month since UFC 235, the place has gone absolutely insane. I mean, the welterweight division is a mess these days. So many big upsets. Wonderboy versus Pettis.
Wow, I'll be honest, and for being a massive Pettis fan, I was glad to see it. But that's a fight in my head. Wonderboy was just going to clean up. He was just going to win that fight easy for me personally. And yes, he was dominating the fight. I think that just shows what this sport is like and what Pettis is like. That's Pettis of old, that kind of win. But I still can't see Pettis kind of getting more than 2 wins under his belt in this division. But big win for him, big win.
And it's another example as well of a fighter moving up in weight.
Yeah.
And why do you think that is? Why are we suddenly seeing so many fighters moving up in weight and finding this new success?
I think a lot of it is, well, I find with some people at least, it's the weight cut. Some people have that struggle kind of getting to that lower weight, so they feel like they might be better sticking at a weight that they're more comfortable getting to. And I know Pettis was saying even with this fight, he felt he was stronger at this weight. Which I know people do say because you're at natural weight, but he said he didn't feel slower, he didn't feel lethargic, anything like that. He felt a lot better.
I know there's a lot of fighters that think that. I know that Gage seldom cuts any weight to do so, and I think Valentino as well.
Yeah, well, I think it's just going to be a natural progression for fighters to start doing that. Like you say, there is this kind of turnaround of people doing it. I know there's been a lot of talk about Darren Till doing it, probably to go to middleweight. I don't know if he's done it welterweight yet, but I think he'll be one of the people to definitely do that.
I think so. I think him versus the Silver Cannonier winner would be a good welterweight fight.
It would be.
The other big story coming out, of course, is a certain Irishman announcing his retirement. Any opinions on that? Yeah, some bloke, the Notorious.
I honestly, I can't keep up with all his drama at the minute.
I think he lost to Joe Duffy in Cage Warriors once.
Oh yeah, another Irishman. Well, when the news came out, he's not retired, because he'd be a fool to. He could come back at any point, make loads of money. So I think him retiring is just something to kind of keep the publicity up with him, keep him kind of relevant to people who maybe not be the fan of the sports, because it was all over the news and everything. Is he done? I don't think so.
The cynic in me thinks that part of the reason of this retirement and all of his social media antics since then, it's a way of trying to jump the queue to get back at Khabib, because I think Conor knows if he tries to do it through the normal means, trying to fight another top 5 fighter, whether it's a Gagey or I know Cowboy Cerrone was linked to the fight, Tony Ferguson, there's a risk of him losing one of those fights. And I think that Conor would rather just jump straight into a title match by trying to talk his way there rather than do it through the normal means.
I honestly don't think his head's in the sport anymore.
No.
From when he started, I would have said put him against a lot of people and he would have had a chance to just annihilate them. Khabib was the only one, even back then, that was the one that was he's maybe off limits. But I think now even someone like Cowboy could give him a tough fight.
Cowboy's a slow starter, though.
And he is. And I just think he could still give a tough fight. He might not win it, but I just don't think McGregor's training the same way as he would for a fight. And I agree with what you're saying. I think he's looking for that big paycheck. It's either that Khabib fight, the Nate fight, everyone's going to say there's the trilogy that might happen, or maybe the Ferguson one. Other than that, Holloway?
Manny Pacquiao.
Oh, man. I don't want to see him box.
No.
I do not want to see him box.
The moment he took the Floyd fight, I think Conor's commitment to the sport was gone.
Yeah, it was. And he actually bigged up that fight for a while to make it happen. I think once he got that paycheck, that was it.
And the other big story that came out as well was, I know this was a surprise to a lot of my fans, they follow the antics of Team Alpha Male very closely, which was TJ Dillashaw popping.
You know what it is? People said he was on steroids after the first... I
think it was the Barrow fight.
Was it the Barrow fight? Okay, the first time I kind of heard a lot of attention with it was with... what's his name? Why can't I remember his name? His main rival. What's his name?
Cruz?
No, not Cruz.
Garbrandt,
yeah, of course. The first Garbrandt win, when he knocked him out, and then he was like flexing as hard as he could, and he was just shredded, and everyone was like, I think he might be on roids there. And I looked at it, I thought, no, he's just training well. He's cut weight. It's tough to see because I really like TJ.
I think the thing that really sort of raised my red flags was the when he was preparing for the Cejudo fight.
Right.
So, I mean, I looked at TJ, and TJ was shredded at 135, and I was thinking, there's no way this guy is going to cut another 10 pounds.
I don't understand how he could.
So I'm fairly certain that he was taking something during that process.
My only issue is I don't understand why these fighters are doing it. Like, do they think they're not going to get caught? I don't know how they think in their head they might slip through the net. I don't know. It was just a shame to see TJ because he got the belt. He beat Garbrandt twice. That was a bit of rivalry. I was more on the TJ side. But now I just feel like everyone's going to say, well, that's how he won all these fights from that. Which may not be the fact, but that's how you can look at it now.
And it's led to the 238 main event as well. Cejudo versus Moraes. Any opinions on that one?
I'll say I'm not looking forward to it. I'm not overly excited about it. Yeah, it might be a great fight, but at the minute, it's not a fight I'd particularly be looking forward to seeing.
Well, I'm not too fussed about it either, mainly because of Cejudo. I mean, there's something about Henry Cejudo that rubs me the wrong way.
Yeah.
And a very impressive fighter, but I just think he's got this air of arrogance about him. And in a sport like that, you come to expect that. So I'm not faulting him for that. But it's just something which, as a fan, I find very hard to warm to. There's three things in MMA that I'm really having a problem with right now. And that's Super Champ fights.
Yeah, I'm the same.
Yep. It's two-way champions, super fight champs, and Holly Holm title shots. And I have to put up with all three over the space of the next 4 months, so this is going to be hard for me.
Yeah, it is. I would agree with you with them. Maybe not so much the Holly Holm thing, but I can see where you come from. I think the two-way champ thing is suddenly... And the superweight, that's the thing now. It's just, where can we make the money? What do people want to see? Fair enough if it's a fight that people maybe have been wanting to see for a while, but it's just every other fight card now. It's like, oh, it's a superweight. Oh, it could be someone fighting for a double champ.
I'm bored of it.
Yeah, I am. It doesn't mean anything anymore for me.
Yeah. Well, it's ironic we're talking about that because we do have an opportunity to see another two-way champion, which will be Max Holloway. Before we get there, though, we need to talk about 236 in a bit more detail because this is one of those cards where you look at the names on there. There aren't that many big names of people on that card. But if you look at the people who are involved and you actually delve into their fighting styles and into their history, there could be some potential bangers here.
Yeah, there definitely could be, and I think there's someone who's making these fight cards happen, and they're probably looking at it the same way. I think they're probably looking into it thinking there's the potential for this to happen or that to happen. And then I think there's the other side of it where it's just like, either this guy hasn't fought in a while, this guy's asked to fight, and they've had to put these fights together. You never know which kind of side of the coin you're going to get. I hope that it is the case that it's good fights and they know what they've kind of put together, but until you see it, you never know.
You never know. Speaking first and foremost about the prelims, any names that stick out for you there?
I'll be completely honest, except Wilson Reyes, I'm a bit slim with some of these. He's the only name that stands out personally for me. I don't know if there's a fight on there that stands out for you.
Well, I'm more curious about Pantoja, his opponent. I saw him on The Ultimate Fighter. He had that great match against Brandon Moreno. I rate him very highly, and I think flyweight right now is kill or be killed. Basically, if you lose a flyweight now, you're going to get cut. You're either going to get cut or you're going to move to bantamweight. So I'm curious to see Pantoja. And also, depending on what happens with Cejudo, how interested he is to defend his flyweight belt,
Right.
he could potentially be one of the final contenders for that belt.
Okay.
Because I personally have him beaten Hayes.
Yeah.
I do.
Well, we discussed this before. Wilson Hayes is always around that area. He's one of those people. He could get beaten. Yeah. There wouldn't be a surprise there, but that could be a good name to take. Could be a good name.
In terms of the other sort of prelim contenders that sort of step out for me, Matt Frivola had that great match against Lando Venata at 230.
Yes.
So he's one to look out for. Also a few sort of more notorious names there. Andreas Sukumantar returning for the first time after his horror show against Sean O'Malley.
Sean O'Malley, yes. I thought I recognised that name from somewhere on here. Yeah, that was a decent one.
Because he was getting dominated in that fight. O'Malley broke his foot, and rather than trying to keep him up, he was trying to wrestle him.
Well, I feel like when you lose a fight like that, your mentality is, I've just got to come back and get a win. Doesn't matter how I do it, I just need to come back and kind of get back into winning ways. So that might be the case for him to do that. But again, I think Garbrandt showed that. Sometimes that mentality is not the best mentality, because you come in, just look for a quick win, and then that's how you get caught. So I think he's got to be careful in that fight.
Anything else that stands out for you?
There isn't anything else on there, I think. Except for you saying that about Superman, I think the rest there's not any on there for me.
So we'll move on to the main card itself. 5 fights here. There's been a recent trend recently for a lot of the main card fights to be dominated by the lighter weights. So we've been seeing a lot of featherweight fights, lightweight fights. This is going more in the opposite direction.
Yep.
So we've got light heavyweights, we've got middleweights on this card. And fight 1 is one which has light heavyweight implications, potential top 15 implications. It's Ovinson Pro taking on Nikita Krylov. A rematch actually from their match at UFC 171.
Okay.
And the first time that we saw OSP's trademark, Von Flute
Von
choke.
Flute choke, yeah. Well, do you think it'll be a repeat? I think we've discussed this about OSP before on here, that he's like that. He's up and down. I think for me personally, it's a big scalp to take for Krylov. Whether or not you can do it's a different matter. It's a tough one, because which OSP turns up, you never know.
He is the most frustrating fighter in the UFC for that reason, because I've seen times where OSP can look like an absolute world beater.
You can.
Yeah, I mean the way he demolished Shogun in like under a minute, which I think was a really good performance. You could say, Shogun got caught, but I think OSP knew exactly what he was doing there. And then there's other times where he's getting rocked and submitted by Illa Latifi.
Oh yeah, and I don't know what it is. Latifi for me, I just can't look at like a fighter. It's like watching Peter Crouch play football. It just doesn't, for me personally, it just doesn't belong. Latifi is a good fighter, but I think for me, OSP is just...
And he's got
fights at the same level all the time. Yeah, exactly. He's an intimidating looking guy. Him versus what was his last fight?
Dominic Reyes.
There were just two big guys going for it, and I thought OSP looks in good shape here, and it's just... I know Reyes is kind of on the up at the minute, but OSP should be doing a lot better than he's doing.
Yeah. I think what OSP's biggest issue is, and I think it's something that sort of always happens to a lot of wrestling-based fighters, is once they get one knockout, they start falling in love with their hands, and they prefer to stand and trade. And I think OSP sometimes falls into that. I think when he gets a fighter on the ground, he can be very dangerous, but he just gets into this habit of trying to go for the big knockout, and he's capable of doing that. We've seen him. I mean, the Corey Anderson KO was amazing.
And that's the thing. Like you're saying there, you get that kind of motivation from doing it once. You want to keep doing it, but I think stick with what you know. He's got like, I mean, I don't know how many Von Flute chokes he's won by.
I think there's been
4,
I
3,
think there's been 5 in the UFC,
5?
and I think he's got 4 of them.
There you go. So stick to what I mean. Ronda did it for ages with an armbar. If it works, don't. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Just keep going with it. Try and get some wins. It's almost like he wants to show that he's more than this one-trick pony. He can do more things, but save that. Keep winning and getting the wins under your belt, because he's like you say, his career is just up and down. You need to stick with what you're good at. That's what I think.
I think at 35 as well, this is sort of like a make or break time for OSP, because he's starting to go out of his physical peak, and I think the reason the UFC have booked this fight is because they potentially see him as a beatable opponent for Krylov,
Right.
and they're starting to see Krylov as a guy that's going to be part of that scene for the next 3 years, whereas OSP maybe isn't.
Right. Well, in that case, they've done it in a good way because, I mean, you could say it's similar to the Reyes fight. It's a big scalp to take.
Yeah.
Whether or not he's up and down, that's a big name. If you beat OSP, that's like, okay. It does kind of push you up the rankings. So I think the same with Reyes, if you get that win, I think that's a great win to kind of get. And if that's the way UFC have kind of maybe not planned it, but are looking at it, then it could be good for the fight.
Now, Krylov's an interesting one to talk about when it comes to his UFC career, especially because he came into the company when he was 21 years old.
Yep.
Had some fights at heavyweight. I think he even beat Walt Harris at one point.
Okay.
And then dropped down to light heavyweight. No real major scalps to speak of, but he wasn't showing himself up in the company. Then he gets cut, spends a bit of time in Russia, built up a 4-fight winning streak, and then they bring him back for the Moscow card against Blachowicz, where I think that golfing quality showed.
Definitely. And I think that is the thing about Blachowicz. He's not even. It's not like that they're putting him with just a kind of warm-up fight. I think that's a big fight to put him in at, coming back into it. I don't know if it was because they've kind of known about him and they've seen what he's been doing in Russia, so they've tried to put him up against someone who they thought might have been similar. But I think, like you say, there was a big gulf in there.
Yeah, because Blachowicz turned that into a wrestling match.
Yeah.
And one of the weaknesses I've always had with Krylov is I don't think he's that good fighting off his back. He's got submission wins.
Yeah.
But it's more when he's in the offensive position.
Yeah.
He's not going to be throwing up triangles or anything like that.
Do you know what it is? I've heard that kind of said about other fights before. And I'm not saying that some people can and some people... I just think being on your back is a tough position, especially if you're gassed or you've been hit hard. Once you're on your back and there's someone on top of you, I always find that it is always going to be a tough decision, a tough kind of situation to be in. But I think that shows the difference between the level that you're at. If you can get out of that position, then it shows you are a kind of a better all-round fighter. Like you say, I think that was too much for him in that fight.
One of the things I do like about Krylov, though, is, especially for light heavyweight, is he uses that sort of karate-style fighting stance, very similar to Machida in that sort of way. And I think that's something that's very unique for the heavier weight classes.
It definitely is. Because at least in my mind, I always think of that karate style as being a bit more light on your feet, being able to kind of get in and out. And I know especially with Lyoto, it's more of a counter-attacking kind of style.
He's more offensive though than Lyoto.
Exactly. So it's an odd kind of style to have at that kind of weight. But if it works for you and you can do it, then it's definitely stick by it. I think Lyoto is one of my favorite fighters. But that karate style, even though he's light on his feet, like I said, it is a counter-attacking kind of style. So to see that in a more aggressive way, I think would be more appealing for fans.
Yeah, and I think this could be an intriguing match to see. Especially, but you've got OSP, who is so unpredictable. Yeah. And I think Krylov, he needs that big win. I was looking through his record before, and his notable wins are people like Fabio Maldonado, Ed Herman, which aren't... I mean, they're the veteran names, but they're not stars.
No, they're not. They're people who, like... You hear those names and you think, oh, okay, he's beating them. But then you kind of think about it and it's like, well, yeah, I know the name, and it's a name that's been in the sport for a while. But like you say, it's just a veteran name. Maybe a bit early in the day you could have said it was a good scalp, but he's beating them. That's what counts. So I like Maldonado. I did like him, but he's not the greatest of fighters.
No. Nearly beat Fedor.
Well, yeah.
Well, the ghost of Fedor.
Didn't know. Oh, man. Let's not talk about Fedor because I'll get upset. I love Fedor. He's one of my favourites.
How about we change the subject then, and you give me a prediction on who you think is going to win this one?
I think I maybe did this with the Dominic Reyes fight as well. I think I would stick with OSP. Just because if he does turn up, I think he's a tough fighter to beat. And because of the way that Blachowicz fight went, I would lean OSP. Let's say Von Flute, Jock. Let us get him back in the winning ways.
I'm going to agree with you. I think it's going to be OSP, second round submission. More than anything because I predicted he would beat Reyes, and that didn't. And I don't want to go the other way and choose Krylov and then have OSP.
Right.
Because I know what OSP's like. He's too unpredictable.
He is. Yeah.
So fight number 2, and we go to our obligatory toilet break match. What is it with the second fights on these UFC cards recently? Because I've noticed that obviously whoever books these fights and chooses a fight order obviously has reasons behind why they choose certain matches to go elsewhere. And I mean, recently we've had matches like Carl Robertson versus Jack Marshman's been on the main card.
Which UFC was that for?
That was 230, Madison Square Garden.
Wow.
That was a weak card. That was a strange card.
For MSG as well.
Because that was the Cormier Derek Lewis card.
Wow.
But they've had that as the 4th fight. Recently they had Weili Zhang and Tisha Torres. Viana versus JJ Aldrich, which was one of the worst fights of last year.
Jeez.
This one, though, is a little bit more promising.
Right.
But again, names that might be a bit unfamiliar to the casual fans. It's Alan Juban going up against Dwight Grant, a welterweight battle. Juban we'll talk about first and foremost because he might not be the most star-studded name out there.
Yeah.
You look at his record, this guy can bang.
I think that's the difference. I think he's an exciting fighter. I think you were saying, we were talking about this before, he's not always maybe fighting as consistently as you'd like. But I think he's an exciting fighter. Like, when I watch him, I feel like he wants to come and fight. It can be a bit reckless at times, but there's something I like about him. I just when I see him fight, like for me, you saying that's a toilet break fight. For me, I'm kind of like, okay, let's see what he's like.
Oh, it's one of the better toilet break
definitely.
fights.
It's an exciting prospect for me.
I mean, I'd much rather have that than say Lauren Mueller versus Poliana Botelho.
Right. Okay. Well, for me, I think it's an exciting fight. I'd like to see that.
And a lot of knockout wins as well. I think it's had 12 fights in the UFC, and he's got 8 knockout wins, including that big one against Ben Saunders last time he fought.
Man. Yeah, and I'll tell you the thing about that one as well. Is it was the same, like the Crow Cup Gonzaga leg kind of behind Ben Saunders' body. Oh, I hate that. But I seen, that was a good knockout. But the whole time I was just wanting the ref to put his leg straight. But again, I think Ben Saunders falls in that category of, it's a name. Maybe not like the best of them best, but that's a good name to maybe have under your belt, I think, for him.
Like if you're a UFC newcomer and you've got like a little bit of hype behind you, you'll get someone like Ben Saunders.
Yeah, and I think that knockout was a good way to kind of to handle that as well.
One of the things I like about Juban in terms of the way he fights, he is very aggressive, a lot of forward pressure. He likes to sort of, very similar to Gagey, he likes to try and fight almost in like a phone box.
Yeah.
Make him very tight, very dirty, uses his elbows and his uppercuts.
Yeah.
So he's not a distant striker, which I think plays quite very well, if I can get my words out here, which plays well when you look at his opponent Dwight Grant. 9-2 record, and in every fight he's had so far, he's dropped his opponent at some point, even in the fights he's
impressive.
Lost. Enters the fight off a good win on his proper UFC debut for Carlo Pedersoli. And Pedersoli had a little bit of hype behind him. He had a, 9 or 10 fight winning streak, something like that. Wow. And dramatic first round knockout. I think it was on the Prague card. Coming up right to the end of the first round. Proper big right hand swing. And knocked out his gum shield as well to send that flying out. So, a very impressive knockout. And I think Dana's reacted to that and thinks, hey, if this guy can do it all the time, that's going to be a good highlight show when we do
it will be.
Packages.
Yeah, and the only issue with that is, I think, like we've said, I think this is going to be a good second fight. The potential for it to end quickly for me is definitely there. The fact we're saying that Juban's definitely reckless, that's so much opportunity for Grant to just hit him with a clean right shot. And if he's knocked all his opponents down, let's just say the likelihood of it happening again is going to be there. I honestly don't think Juban would get up though.
Can a fight be considered good when it ends in like under a minute?
It's tough because look at the hype. I know it was a title fight, but McGregor versus Aldo, that's just, it's the greatest thing that's ever happened. I would have loved to have seen that as a rematch.
Yes. And I've always said the same thing. That's one of those fights that should have been a rematch.
They should have. I don't know why they didn't. There must have been something there, or I don't know if I don't know. But
I think a lot of it was down to Aldo's drawing power,
right.
because Aldo was never a popular champion.
No.
I think he had something like, I think the Chad Mendes fight did something like 250. I think Zombie did was 130. So he was never the best drawing champion. I think the UFC just wanted a shot of him, which I couldn't get my head around, because Aldo was an entertaining fighter.
He was. And I would have...
Still is.
If you have that as a rematch, I think it goes different. I'm not saying it would have... Conor might not have won, but I just think it would have been a different fight. So the same with this. To be honest, if it's just all guns blazing in that 1 minute, then you can say, wow, okay, that's good for a highlight reel or whatever. But
Alisson versus Price.
Well, there you go. So I don't know. That's a tough one to call. I don't know. Would you say it was a good fight? Because it's not, if you said if a fight ended in under a minute.
Oh, McGregor-Aldo, it's not a good fight.
It's not a good fight.
Moment,
yeah,
but it's a good fight. But
that's something I'm sure UFC love. That is a nice little highlight reel, and McGregor loves that. But to say something's a good fight for it just being under a minute, I don't know. But take that away from everything. If Grant did that in under a minute, I'm sure you'd be happy.
I'm a little bit worried about Grant's chances in this match.
Yeah,
I think he's got that knockout power, and obviously if he catches Juban, then I think Allen's going to go down.
Yeah.
Because he's 36 as well, so you've got to wonder how much his chin's going to hold up. But one of the issues I've had when I watched the highlights of Dwight Grant, because I've seen him on the Contender Series and I saw the Pedersoli fight, he just has this habit of loading up his left hand a bit too much.
Right.
It's all like, I'm going to hit you with this big knockout punch here.
Just haymakers all the time.
And he leaves himself exposed. And I think when you've got Juban, who has this sort of dirty boxing style, likes to throw the uppercuts, I think he's just going to keep catching them. And I think he's going to get to the stage where Juban's just going to keep wearing him down, and then maybe try and finish him second or third round.
And I agree with what you're saying, actually. That makes sense. But again, it's one of those situations where, from what I was saying about him knocking Juban down, for you saying that he can kind of avoid those haymakers and get him with a couple of combinations, it could go either way. You could see either one happen. If he loads up with them haymakers, the thing I'm worried about is some leg kicks from Juban, some head kicks. If you get one of them from left field, you don't see it coming, that could be it over as well. It just depends how it kind of turns up. If you say Grant turns up and he's not throwing those haymakers as much, or he landed a couple, then he might continue with that. It might be a good game plan. I'm excited for this fight.
What I'm hoping for is we don't get a Lewis and Ngannou situation where both of them are aware of the dangers each have in terms of their knockout power.
And cancel each other out.
Yeah.
It can happen. I don't think it will happen with this one. I'm sure. As Juban, did he lose his last fight?
He beat Saunders.
He beat before Saunders. Sorry.
I think he lost the one before Saunders.
Right.
He doesn't fight all that often though, which I found quite surprising.
But that's the thing. Sometimes I don't know how frequent he is, but sometimes you don't. I always think 2 to 3 fights a year is what you should be aiming for. I don't think any more than that. Let's see what happens. The fact he's not active might play a part in that, but let's see.
What we got here is a battle, in my opinion, between a polished technical striker and sheer brute strength. Yeah. I'm personally going with Juban.
Right.
Which way are you going?
I'd go Grant. Not just because the namesake, but I'm just going to go Grant because of the recklessness of Juban. And I think, from what you said, I didn't know this, but the fact he's knocked all of his opponents down, and the power he's got, I think if he connects with Juban, that's it. I don't think he gets up. So I'm going to go for Grant.
Fight number 3, and we're going back to the light heavyweight division, and we have got one of the favourites of the UFC, which is Eric, your boy, Anders, who is going up against Khalil Roundtree Jr. A battle between hard-hitting but, dare I say, limited strikers.
Yeah, you could say that. I don't think... The thing about Anders is he is a good fighter, but I just don't think he wins as much as he should. I don't think he's got that kind of... I don't know, I just can't think he follows through, and I think it's the same with Roundtree there. So yeah, maybe limited on what they can do, but if you've put them together to have a fight, it could be different. You may see who's kind of the superior striker there, or it could just be an all-out slugfest.
I think the issue I have with Anders, and I think it's something that happens with a lot of these NFL players that come and try and take up the sport, physically, their natural physical skill is evident, and they do have a lot of power built into them.
Yeah.
But we've seen it with Anders in his career, and we saw it with Greg Hardy when he fought Alan Crowder. That technique isn't there yet. And once you face somebody that isn't going to crumble, they just don't know how to follow up on that. I mean, Anders can throw some big knockout punches. We've seen that before. He's knocked a lot of people out. But when he's having to chase the fight and he's facing someone that isn't coming towards him, he just gets himself careless. I think he's terrible at corner cutting, in my opinion. Because we saw that against Machida, where Machida wasn't wanting to engage with him. Same with Theodorou.
It's frustrating though to do that. Like you saying, him not being able to cut off corners. If you're chasing someone, I tell you what, it's frustrating to watch as well. Sometimes it's just like
it's always frustrating to watch Theodorou.
It's just such a frustrating thing to watch, and for him, I'm sure it's frustrating. And like you say, because he's a natural athlete, a part of me thinks that should kind of benefit him because he's got that kind of physique and he's been in that situation of kind of keeping up the cardio and kind of chasing that down. But you're now trying to hit someone and knock someone out or fight with someone. It's frustrating. I don't think that will happen in this fight.
What do you think are Anders's biggest strengths as a fighter?
That's a tough one. Maybe the fact he can keep going. It's not the fact of, like I say, he's not chasing these people down, but I think he can kind of keep that kind of pressure up for a long time. Like I say, it doesn't always come out the way he wants it to come out because he's having to chase it and that, but I think he can keep going for a long time. But like you say, there's the chance of that getting caught. And his heart's in it. His heart's definitely in it.
And you could make an argument as well. I mean, I scored the Theodorou fight the way of Elias.
Yeah. But
I felt he beat Machida.
Yeah. Okay. I'm a Machida fanboy, so I disagree. Yeah. He's not won loads of his last fights, so I don't know what his record is.
At the moment, Anders, I think he is 3-3 in the UFC.
He's won 3.
He's won 3. He beat Natal, Marcus Perez, and I can't remember the name. I think it might have been Luke Sanders. I think the other one, because Sanders was sort of like getting up, and just as he lifted his hands off, Anders threw a head kick. Okay.
I think this is going to be one of them ones that's just back and forth. I'm hoping this is a good fight. I think they'll be both going for that win.
One of the things that I always have an issue with when it comes to Anders, and it was something you touched on there in terms of how many fights a fighter should take, is that when you're fighting quite often, it puts you in the UFC's good books. I mean, if you're willing to say, hey, I'm going to take this fight on 10 days' notice to try and save the card, because I know he did that against Thiago Santos, because I think that was supposed to be Glover versus Manuwa originally, and then he got chopped and changed so many times and ended up with Santos versus Anders, who were two natural middleweights at the time, fighting at light heavyweight for some reason. I think that's a good trait to have, but it can work to your detriment. I think he's fighting too often. And if you're winning, say, 3 fights in the space of 3 months, and people are going to say, hey, check out this guy, he's doing really well.
Yeah,
but if you're losing 3 fights in 3 months, people are going to start raising the red flags.
So is that how many he's had, 3 in 3 months?
No, I was just exaggerating.
Okay, so how many has he had?
I think last year he fought 4 times.
I think that's too many. I mean, if you're winning them, fair enough, but like you say, he's not. I think you should, like I say, 2 to 3 fights a year. Because what you're doing is you're going into a fight, wherever the outcome is, I don't know how many days or weeks it is before you arrange the next fight. You're then preparing for the next fight. I don't think you've got enough time to be recovering and preparing for the next fight, especially if you're losing.
And I think as well, this is a bit of a last chance for him as well.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I don't think he's going to get cut or anything like that, but the UFC think highly of Anders, considering they give him so many main events, so many opportunities. If he loses this one, that's going to be 3 losses in his past 4. And this is a new weight class for him as well. And I just can't see that sort of hype train continuing for him, the UFC continuing to push him.
I'll tell you why I can't as well, because if let's say you're a higher level of fighter than him, and you had 3 out of 4 losses, I tell you what, people would be turning on you quick.
Unless you're Holly Holm.
Yeah. Or Chris Weidman.
Yes.
It seems Chris Weidman won't get. But I think Well, the same with Chris Weidman. As soon as he lost those 3 fights, people were just like, hang on. This guy beat Anderson? No. He lost a lot of kind of respect and fans from people. And I think he was upset about it. But I think if that can happen at a high level, I think at this level, the same's going to happen, if not already. And like you're saying, the UFC won't cut him. I'm not going to say they will or they won't, but if he loses this one and another one, I think they will.
Although we have seen what former middleweight journeymen have been doing at light heavyweight recently.
Yeah.
Maybe Anderson's that next man.
Oh, I don't want to say that. Anderson's... I don't like the fact Anderson's maybe being used as this guy now to... Almost like that OSP guy now. Just like, oh, he's a good... I mean, I'm not comparing them two in the slightest. I'm just saying that let's just give him Anderson on. If he beats him, that's a great scouting. But I don't want Anderson to be that guy. I want Anderson to stay at that higher level. I must say, it's tough for Anderson because he's such a legend of the sport. I just don't want to see him getting
I've
used.
got a feeling Anderson retires on the Brazil card regardless of if he wins or loses.
Yeah.
I think home crowd, and I mean he's got nothing to prove anymore.
He doesn't.
And people love Anderson, and I don't think any fight he's having now is going to tarnish him, as it were. And I think if he was to go out on a win against Cannonier, I think he calls it a day there.
I just don't know if Anderson's even looking... this sounds really bad to say. I just don't know if Anderson's looking at these fights like, I can win that fight. I could win that fight. I think he's just kind of taking a fight to kind of, I don't know, respect these fans and to kind of stay in the sport. But I think he needs... If he can get a win against Cannonier, like you say, that's the best time to kind of bow out.
Khalil Roundtree. Now, I knew we were supposed to be going there somewhere. Yeah, we have been focusing a lot on Eric Anders, and then we talked about Anderson Silva there. We will talk about Khalil Roundtree. Now, I don't usually talk about stuff like this on the show, but I was reading a little bit into Khalil's backstory.
Yep.
And before he took up mixed martial arts, he was over 300 pounds in weight.
Wow.
He took up MMA as a means to get himself into shape, and now he's fighting in the UFC. And I think that's a really good story to have.
That is a good story. How long did that take? How many years was that for him to get in the UFC, do you know?
I don't know off the top of my head.
Well, that's the thing. Sometimes you need to set yourself a goal, and you've got... Your main goal may not be the thing that it actually turns out to be. And from just trying to lose weight, he's now bettered his life completely. So that's good. 300 pounds is a lot.
It's a lot.
Jeez.
I think Junior Albini did the same thing. I think he was over 400 pounds.
That's a lot of weight to cut. But they say like stuff like boxing is some of the best cardio you can do. So I don't know what he started with, but that's good to get down that weight and to now be in the UFC. That's fantastic.
I think when you weigh that story into account, I think Khalil's one of those sort of people who I think a lot of people underestimate in the UFC, because you look at him, he doesn't look the most physically imposing. He's quite a stoic figure, doesn't show all that much emotion. But this guy can crack. I mean, he's got a lot of power considering his physique.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Sometimes that's could be the thing where people underestimate him because of the way he looks, and maybe he doesn't look the most threatening or intimidating, but that doesn't matter in this sport. Like, if you can hit people and you can defend yourself and you can take down... If you know what you're doing in this sport, then that's all that matters. It's a different thing once you're in there, and against Saunders it's going to be different, but let's see what happens.
Because Khalil had sort of been sort of like one of the lower level light heavyweights. He'd fought on, I think, season 23, The Ultimate Fighter, had beaten Paul Craig, and then it was the Saki fight that made people sit up and say, wow.
Well, I think...
Nobody had Roundtree winning that fight.
I'll be honest, I've not seen that fight. But was that in The Ultimate Fighter?
No, that was UFC 226.
Right. Well,
but like Saki came in with all this hype, being like one of the greatest kickboxers of all time, and then Roundtree drives his straight left hand and knocks him out.
See, that's all it takes. This is what I mean. So you can't say you can't look at him.
4-ounce gloves.
Well, you can't underestimate someone. Why do people underestimate him? This is what I don't get. If you're saying that he's done this before and he's got the track record of doing that, shouldn't underestimate his striking ability when it's been proven before.
I think it's elsewhere. I think where his game's lacking. I don't think he's all that good in terms of takedown defense.
Right. His ground game.
His ground game isn't the best. Right. And again, it's the physique. I think people look at him and just take him a lot less seriously than what they should. He is coming into this fight though on a bit of the back foot. He was the first victim of Johnny Walker's reign of terror through the light heavyweight rankings. Yeah. Nasty elbow to knock him out. Yeah. And when you have a fighter who gets knocked out that viciously, there's a lot of people who think it sort of changes your approach, especially the first fight after. Do you feel this is what Roundtree's going to do?
We kind of were speaking about this before. It can change him, like you say, it can change your mindset. He might be thinking, I just want to come straight back into this, get a win, but go guns blazing to do that. And that could be to his detriment. He might then end up getting a quick knock. Someone might quickly knock him out. I think he'll be a bit more level-headed than that. I think he'll come into this and take his time and not try and rush into it. But the way he got knocked out with that elbow, it can't. Vicious. Yeah. And do you know what the thing is? It looked like, for me, watching it, that there was going to be a knee thrown, and it was like he was almost preparing for that, and then the elbow, he switched it to the elbow. He'll be watching that, and he'll be thinking where to kind of change those steps to in those positions. I think he'll be a lot more level-headed come to this. I don't think he's going to want to make that mistake again. I
think we're going to see quite a defensively minded Roundtree. Yeah. I think he's going to be quite happy to stay on the outside, not only because of the knockout, but because he'll know about Anders's issues when it comes to trying to chase a fight.
Yeah.
My issue is when you get that moment where he has an opportunity to strike, is he going to take it? And that's the fear I have, considering what happened against Walker. I think this is going to be a tricky fight to call. And maybe because I quite like Eric Anders, I want to see him become a success, I'm going to say he gets the win.
I would lean towards him as well. I just think the 3 out of 4 losses isn't fantastic. But again, it's one of those things, you've now got someone who's lost that in that way with an elbow against someone who's lost 3 out of 4. I'm not saying it's a must win for them both, but they're both going to look at it that way, I think. I like this thing. Anders is going to win it. That's probably who I'd lean for.
I'm going to say Anders by decision.
I would agree.
So
I'm not going to say. I don't think there's going to be too much action. I'm going to say a decision.
So there you go. Eric Anders will be fighting Jon Jones in a year's time for the light heavyweight title.
Oh God, you know what it is? Jon Jones is cleaned the division out. There's no one else. He needs to go to heavyweight. Make it happen.
Yeah, him versus Stipe would have been amazing.
Wow.
I know that fight was rumored before 239.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, it would have been a good fight. But even Stipe, he got through a stage where it was like, I thought he might be a champ that stayed in there for a long time. Never know what can happen in the sport. But I do think Jon Jones is unbeatable at light heavyweight.
I'm going to be very curious to see. I think obviously he's got the Santos fight, which I think he's going to win that one. And then who have you got? Reyes and potentially Johnny Walker, or maybe Rockhold moving up. Those are the only.
Definitely say Reyes. I think Reyes is definitely going to be in there. And do you know what? I think Jon Jones knows it as well. I'm sure I've seen something where he kind of made a little comment towards Reyes, and it was kind of like, that means you're on my radar. I know you're about. So I think that fight was probably going to happen quite soon. But I just don't want UFC to rush it.
No, they can't rush Reyes.
They can't. He's slowly going up, and I don't want him to suddenly be pushed into the top. And it's like, oh, Jon Jones beat him again, and it's like, oh well, no, there's no one else. Give him time. Let him work his way up. You never know. Anthony Smith was too soon.
Yeah.
If ever. I don't know if he should have been there, but I think Reyes will definitely be one of the people. I don't know. Interesting that you said Luke Rockhold though.
Yeah, Rockhold is going to fight Blachowicz.
Okay.
At I think 239, so he's going to be on the undercard.
Right.
And obviously Luke has that big match experience. I don't think Luke will win that fight if it ever does happen, but it's another big name out there. And I think when you have a division like that where you're struggling for these sort of big established stars, you just got to weigh up the possibilities. You
do, yeah. I just light heavyweight's a bit all over the place. I think it's just a matter. Just don't even wait. Just push him into heavyweight. Let's see it happen. What's the point of fighting all these? No, I don't want to call them bums, but for me, there's such a gap between Jon Jones and the rest. For me,
the thing is, if you took Jon Jones out of light heavyweight, so let's say you had that top branch, which was like say Gus, Thiago Santos, Anthony Smith, Rakic, who's coming up there. That's a good division.
It is.
It's just, it's not as good as the top guy.
But then I think you have Cormier coming to light heavyweight and then just doing the same things as Jones is doing. I don't think that... I don't mind if there's a dominant champ when he's had tough fights to maybe defend his belt. When it's just cleaning people out. I think if you didn't have DC and Jon Jones in that weight division, I think the belt would be exchanging hands quite a lot, and there'd be different champions all the time. But I do agree, it's a great division. Honestly, Gustafsson, I just think is such a good fighter. But again, if DC's in that, he's just always going to be third. He's just a top 5 fighter with them two in there. So I'd like to see maybe Jon Jones move out of there.
So we'll focus on our core main event, and it is for the interim middleweight championship. Interim belts the back.
Why?
This is one I think that actually does make sense, because obviously this stems from UFC 234. Yep. Robert Whittaker was supposed to face Kelvin Gastelum. Had to pull out of the fight on, I think, 5 hours notice. Went down with illness.
Yeah.
Adesanya stepped in against Anderson Silva. That was the main event.
Yeah.
And as a compromise, an interim belt was created between Kelvin and Izzy to determine who fights Whittaker next. I don't usually like interim belts, but there's been so many question marks about Whittaker and his long-term health.
Yeah.
I think it was right to make this fight, because this is more of a, say, like a Dominic Cruz situation where there are legitimate question marks on if he can defend.
Yeah. I disagree with everything you said. I just don't like interim belts.
I don't like it either, but
I think Adesanya, like I've seen with Reyes, it's like they just want a superstar. Stop trying to push him through. Give him time. It doesn't have to be... Why does it have to be an interim belt? Let them fight. If there's a winner, fair enough. If, for whatever reason, Whittaker can't continue or whatever, then there's a vacant belt. And
that's one of the things I actually quite liked about 234's main event falling through, because we had Adesanya versus Silva headlining the card, and it was 3 rounds, non-title fight. It was almost old school. Yeah. It was like an old school UFC card.
It was, because I remember thinking it was crazy because they'd signed up for the 3 rounds, so they couldn't change it. So I was watching the main event like, this is 3 rounds. Like, this never happens. And it was, I got the same kind of feeling where I was just like, oh, this is old school.
Tell you what, it was a glorified sparring session, but what an entertaining sparring session.
It was. And I know people say that Adesanya is the new Silva. I don't think he is, because I think he's different. I think he's got a lot more in his locker than I think Silva did even in his prime. Not taking away anything from Silva, because Silva had so much, like, his arsenal was unbelievable, but it was upsetting to see, because I felt like Adesanya could have ended it really anytime he wanted. But it was a good performance even from Silva. He did stay in there.
He tagged him a couple of times.
He did. I just think Adesanya realistically probably could have, if he wanted to end it, he could have. And that's the way I was watching it, just like, end it. But also don't, because Silva might win. But I think Adesanya could have won it.
The thing I love about Izzy when I've watched him in his fights so far is, for somebody who's quite young into his UFC career, his composure is fantastic.
It is,
He doesn't rush, he doesn't get carried away, he just takes his time with his strikes. And I think his strike accuracy, how good's his strike accuracy so far?
I don't know, I couldn't put a percentage on it, but from even just that last fight, so accurate. He doesn't, and I think that's a great advantage to him, is that he's not just swing or I've missed. He's waiting, he's pinpointing, he's very precise. And he doesn't need to rush because of that. And he's got long limbs and he's got leg kicks. He doesn't need to rush those things. Doesn't need to rush the strikes, because he knows he can get them at any point.
One of the concerns I've always had about Adesanya, because I think his first UFC fight was 221, so he's been in just over a year, which, considering how quickly he's risen up the rankings, is so impressive to me, is I think his takedown defense, his takedown defense is fantastic, but if somebody does get him on the ground, there's a lot of question marks there. Marvin Vettori, who isn't a great wrestler by any means, he had his way with him. Yeah, Adesanya just scraped by that fight.
Yeah, but then you got to think in this division who might you come against that might have the potential to do that. He's got Gastelum next. Say he wins that, does that mean it's Whittaker next?
I think the assumption is so.
Yeah,
One of the stories I've heard is if Adesanya was to win this, the UFC might try and book the Etihad Stadium again.
Really?
Because it's going to be Australia versus New Zealand.
Okay.
So have that big 60,000 seat stadium.
That's interesting. Yeah, I think Gastelum v Adesanya is going to be stand-up. I think Whittaker v Adesanya would be stand-up. So, although he may have a weakness once he gets taken down, I'm not saying he wouldn't get taken down by either of those. I don't think, unless they use that to their advantage, I don't think it will happen.
Ironically, I think the guy that might cause Adesanya problems is Weidman.
Yeah.
Considering how poor Weidman's record's been, but if that fight happened, considering Chris's wrestling background...
Yeah, he's wrestling... that's the thing. His wrestling's unbelievable. And think about the Anderson Silva fight. Didn't really use it. He just stood and striked with him. So maybe Weidman's looking at that as a possibility, thinking, you know what? Yeah, he's great at striking, whatever. If I can get him down, I've won that fight.
And Weidman also has a win over Adesanya's opponent, Kelvin Gastelum.
Yeah. Yeah, we've spoke about this before. That weight, that
it's
size
always
difference.
going to be the issue with Kelvin in that weight class.
I think he's probably made the right decisions for himself to fight this division, probably health-wise as well. He's small, though. And I think the Weidman fight showed it. And I think if you come against other people, you may see it as well.
Because, I was looking at the stare-downs between these two when they were doing the press conference, and the height difference between Kelvin and Adesanya was ridiculous. He looked like John Lineker in there.
Well, height does make a difference, because look at Latifi. I'm sure Latifi fought Stefan Struve. I'm sure he did. And that height difference. Pat Barry versus Stefan Struve.
Mark Hunt versus Stefan Struve.
Well, there you go. So anyone versus Stefan Struve. So, yeah, I don't think the height's going to be a massive difference, massive issue. The one thing that will be the issue with the height is the length of his limbs. That's where it'll come into effect, keeping that distance. And like we were saying, I think that's what Adesanya does do very well with his striking. Kelvin's going to have to get quite close. You get close, then you got knees and elbows coming in. So it'll be a tough fight.
The one thing Kelvin does have going for him, though, is that left hand.
It is.
That is one of the most powerful strikes in the sport right now.
It is. And like I say, you come close, you've got those elbows and you've got those knees from Adesanya, but you've also got that punching power from Gastelum. To be fair, I think that's where a lot of the fight is going to try to be, because Gastelum can't fight from distance, so he's going to have to push. He's going to have to go forward. So if he's not going forward, he's lost the fight.
The one thing I will say, though, and I think a lot of people have maybe been overlooking this, considering Kelvin's tendency to stand these days. Yeah. Kelvin has a wrestling background. Yeah. Do you think we might see him trying to rely on that a bit, considering Adesanya's weakness on the ground?
Possibly. It's the same, like I said, about him and Whittaker maybe using that to their advantage. If Gastelum can't get in close enough to start throwing combinations, it might be the only thing he's got. Again, the issue of that is still getting close enough to be able to take him down. He's going to have to rush in, grapple him. You've got the issue of the knees, but if you can take him down, it will be an issue, because Gastelum will be able to hold him down.
I see, as much as I do like Kelvin, and I personally, I have to be honest, I thought Kelvin would beat Whittaker when we did that preview show. Yeah. But I think the reach of Adesanya is going to be too much. Yeah. I think he's going to keep it a bit. I'm going to see something similar to the Brad Tavares fight. Okay. Where I think Adesanya looked amazing.
Just unleashed on him.
So I'm going to say Adesanya wins this by unanimous decision. Okay. I don't think he finishes him.
Oh, well, firstly, I thought Whittaker would beat Gastelum, which I don't like Whittaker, so it upsets me to say that. But yeah, I thought he would, because I think Whittaker has improved so much and he's an all-round good fighter. I think I agree with what you're saying with Adesanya. I think he just picks Gastelum apart. The length is going to be ridiculous. And I think it probably gets finished at the end of second round.
So we move on to our main event, and we have got another interim lightweight title. Great. So they shouldn't call this UFC 236. This should be UFC 235.5.
I don't understand the interim belts. Just don't have it. Just have it. This is one with the vacant belt?
This is the one because Khabib jumped in to fight Dylan Dennis.
Which was a great fight, but yeah. Well, okay. I still don't think there should be an interim belt, but
yeah. And again, it's another issue as well in that we have a featherweight champion in a stacked division with a lot of contenders, instead choosing to move up to try and become a two-weight champion. Again, it's another of those pet peeves that a lot of MMA fans have, as much as we do like Max.
Yeah, and the thing is, I was praising Holloway before, but why? Just stay in your... Don't try and be a two-weight champion just to get some sort of like record and mark on your CV to say I've done it. Clean out a division.
Yes. I've always said the only two-weight champion who deserved the chance to move up was DC, because there were no contenders.
Yeah. And the thing with that is you could get Jones doing the same.
Yeah.
If there was, obviously, if he cleaned out the heavyweight division, but he's cleaned out the light heavyweight division, so move on. I just don't think at this point in Max Holloway's career he should be doing it.
No, because look at how many good fights you could have. You could have Volkanovski, Moicano, Zabit.
Yep. Zabit would be a good one.
That would be a hell of a fight.
Yeah, I don't know who makes these decisions, who decided it. Is it Max Holloway been chasing this fight?
The accountant.
Right, of course.
That being said, though, we can't take anything away from Max, because the performance against Brian Ortega has to be up there as one of the best we've ever seen.
Yeah, from him, he was just, like I said at the start, he's improved so much, and it was an all-round performance. He took the hits, but the combinations he was throwing and the combinations he was dodging from Ortega got some good hits in there, but it was just...
And that's the thing, it wasn't as if Brian fought a bad fight.
No.
It's just Max was on a completely other level.
But he still made Ortega look slightly average. And that's something I would never thought I'd say about Brian Ortega. And it was a big shock for me, because although Max Holloway has improved a lot and I've seen him fight really well, that was a fight where I just thought, because I thought Ortega would give him a lot more of a challenge, I just thought, wow, Holloway has improved ridiculous amounts. It might just been the night or whatever, but a rematch of that?
It'll have to be a long way down the road.
Yeah.
Because I've heard the rumour they're doing Ortega versus Zabit at 238.
Okay.
Which I think could be a very good fight.
Could be.
You've been touching on a lot of points there, and I think the big thing that a lot of people are surprised by when it comes to Max is just how much he has grown. Because the first fight he had, ironically, it was against Dustin Poirier.
Yeah.
He was just this 20-year-old kid. He took that fight on short notice. I think Poirier is the only man who's actually finished him.
Wow.
Submitted him with an armbar. But the way he's grown since then.
Yeah.
Because I always thought, Max has got this big winning streak. I remember watching the Aldo fight, the one in Brazil.
Yeah.
And I just thought, this is going to be too big for him. He's not going to be Jose Aldo in Brazil. And the composure he showed in that fight, I just thought, he's made it. He's done it.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, I was the same. Aldo, I didn't think would have been as much of a threat as he previously was, but I still thought Aldo can turn up when he wants to. And like you said, it was in Brazil, but Max Holloway, he came in and did what he was meant to do, did the job. He has improved, but the other side of that for me is that Poirier has improved.
Yes.
And he continues to improve. So the Poirier of old, I was just so not bored of him. I just thought, you win or lose. Now I look at Poirier like a fighter to come in there. I think he's going to just put on a show.
I mean, Poirier had always been, for me, a submission expert.
Yeah.
But I think the quality in his stand-up is substantial. And I think it's not just the fights he's winning, it's how he's winning them as well.
Yeah.
I mean, he's going toe-to-toe with people like Gaethje, Pettis, Alvarez.
Yep.
And he's coming out on top.
Exactly. And they were all fights that I would have in the past said he's lost those. Since he's got hair. Since he's grown hair.
Salon quality Poirier.
Yeah. That's it. He's like Samson. He's got the hair now and that's it. But I think of old, he would have lost all of those fights. Yeah, he's impressed me. And I think this fight is going to be amazing. If they don't keep it boring, if they both strike, which I think they will, I think it'll be an amazing fight.
Do you think that Poirier winning that first fight is going to give him some sort of psychological edge?
I don't, to be honest. I think because of the length it's been and the fact they've both come on so much now, and Poirier's not going to have not noticed Holloway's improvement. He's going to know Holloway's improved. He's going to see. He's got the belt. You know what I mean? He's got the belt, so he's going to know that he's already got a belt in one division. He's a champ for a reason. And I know it's, like I said, it is a different weight class, but he'll know what he's up against, and I don't think it'll play much difference.
So you don't think we're going to get a Reginald versus Kevin Lee situation here?
Oh, no. I think it's going to be...
I mean, Al Iaquinta is a top 5 fighter now. Would you have ever thought that a year ago?
No, and I like Al Iaquinta, but I never would have put... You could have put money on me, and I would have said... I mean, I always said Barbosa would be champ when he first joined, 8 years ago, maybe? That's never happened, so... You can't get proven wrong. Al Iaquinta, however much he can fight and he can... Striking's great. I never would have said that about him, so... Yeah, I don't think... Previous wins don't mean anything. Unless you've beat someone... Unless it's like Ken Shamrock and Tito Ortiz, where it's like, look, why are we still doing this? I'm always going to win. This is different. I think they've both improved a lot. And I think they're both different fighters to who they were back then, so...
I mean, there is a real... The big issue I have with an interim belt is that we have a real logjam right now at 155. We've got Khabib, the champion, who doesn't want to fight until later on in the year. Yeah. Conor's trying to talk his way into getting another fight. Yeah. You've got Tony Ferguson. I know he's going through a lot of issues, but he's still in the mix. Yep. And then you've got Holloway and Poirier. And also as well, if Max was to win this fight, what does that do to the featherweight division?
Don't do double champs. Just
I've always said that.
And I don't understand the Khabib thing, because everyone
wanted Khabib versus Tony.
Yeah, and it's not going to happen. All I know is that Conor didn't defend his belt and he got hell for it. Now Khabib, I know there was a lot, obviously, with the situation after the McGregor fight. I just think get in there and start defending your belt, start staying in there. But unless the Ferguson fights happen, who's going to fight Khabib?
That's a question. Well, technically, it should be the winner of this fight.
Okay.
But again, you've got 2 other viable options in there.
I don't like when divisions start getting like this, where it's just... And I don't want to say he's done it, but McGregor's not been a massive help in the situation whatsoever. If he wants to retire, which he's not going to do, just take him out of the rankings, retire him, and don't mention his name again. Let it just be between these, because since McGregor was champ, the amount of people that have called him out and have kept him relevant is just... If no one had mentioned his name, he might have retired. He might have actually gone, but people keep bringing him up. And now, like you say, there's this situation in that division where what's going on? We don't know who's going to be fighting or who's going to be active and who's going to... maybe that's why they're doing it with Max Holloway. I don't know.
Yeah. Are you picking Max to win this one?
Yes. I think I would have gone Poirier, but because of the Ortega fight, it just showed me a different level of Holloway's ability.
And that's exactly the same. I think Max's volume is going to be the real key here. Yeah. The one worry I have with Max, though, and I always say this with a lot of young fighters, is for someone who's 27 years old, he's got a lot of miles on him.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time, it's not your physical age which is the factor, it's fighter age.
It is, yeah.
And I just got this fear, I don't know when it's going to happen, I just get this fear that it's going to be a TJ versus Barrow situation where he's going to get caught and he's never going to be the same fighter.
And you think Poirier is the man to do it? Or just in the future it might happen?
It's going to happen.
Okay.
It's going to happen, I don't know when. I don't think it's going to be Poirier. That's sort of like there's that ticking time bomb that's going to go off at some point.
Well, here's the thing. If Max ends up somehow being double champ, it'll happen. Because he'll have to fight someone eventually who's going to have the ability to do that.
And a lightweight who's a lot bigger and a lot more powerful.
Exactly. And there's a few of them who are mean as well. So
I think Holloway versus Khabib could be a hell of a fight, though.
I think Holloway versus Khabib, I think lightweight at the top 3 level is too much for Holloway. I really think it is. I don't think he can survive in that. I would love him to prove me wrong, because like I say, I've got a newfound respect for him after that Ortega fight, but I think that would be too much for him. I think Poirier could be the man to do it, but he won't be the man to do it. So I'm going to go Holloway.
I have to say, considering the comparative lack of star power on this card, this could be a corker.
It could be. And just talking through the fights there is kind of shown like there is the possibility for, if they all go the way that we would like them to, it could easily be. But you've got the possibility of people cancelling each other out, and I'd like it to be good. I've got fingers crossed it's going to be good.
I always said, ever since UFC 224, I will never rule out any pay-per-view card.
And that's the thing, you can't. At the end of the day, it's two people who are going to go in there to try and fight each other. So I don't think you can rule it out. Sometimes I find the first fight almost sets the bar for it. You might get the first fight and it's a bit boring. Then the second one, you're like, and it kind of goes slow. And you kind of looking at the main events to kind of save it. I think the main events will. I do think that, if the first three aren't great.
So that's all the time that we have for the UFC 236 preview show. I've been Carl Bainbridge, that's been Max Grant. Unfortunately, Tim wasn't here. He was on his way to Aintree for the Grand National.
Nice to see him.
Yep. But hopefully he will be back for UFC 237, which will be the Brazil card. First time the strawweights have headlined a pay-per-view.
Wow. I don't know how I feel about that. It's an odd one to think, just to kind of picture it in my head. We'll save it. We'll talk about it then.
And it's something that we are really looking forward to. So please join us in a month's time here on INC, and please continue to support the channel. My name's been Carl Bainbridge. That's been Max Grant. And we hope you enjoy 236.
See you later.